Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate all of you. Let's get started with the roll call for attendance.
Okay, Amy
Here.
Fred Banuelos, absent. Marva Hammond
Here.
Deanna Sargent, absent. Preston Shell here. Matt Parks
here.
Kevin
Here.
Karen Speakman, absent, and Wes.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum with 6 out of 9 members present.
Great, thank you. And we may see some others come in. The parking situation isn't the easiest.
So it's full downstairs.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the street parking doesn't accept the Apple Pay or any of those sorts of things. So.
Darn, okay. But it sounds like Deanna is on her way. And I'll just ask everybody here at the table to project as much as possible. I think the audio is pretty good, but folks online, if you're having trouble hearing us, just let us know.
Okay, so first up on our agenda is the approval of the December 17th meeting minutes. Did everyone get a chance to look at those? Entertain a motion to approve the minutes from December?
To approve?
Kevin?
Second.
Thanks, Matt. Second. Any additional questions, comments, concerns? Okay,
We can do a voice vote.
yeah, let's just go first. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, I know we did have a few subcommittee updates from other committees, so did you want to?
Yes, so real quick, if everybody online could unmute unless they're speaking, just to minimize feedback, that would be great.
Hey, Deanna.
And then my update as far as the task force goes, we just this morning, I met with our task force co-chairs and we have selected dates for the full task force to meet in February and March. So I will read out those dates to you now, but they will also be online and you'll get a calendar invite if you're a full member. So the full task force will convene on February 6th at 1:30 p.m. in the Senate hearing room. That will be the first full task force meeting, during which we're hoping to have 2 or 3 of the subcommittees report out with their recommendations. Then our second full task force meeting in February will be on the 20th, again at 1:30 p.m. in the Senate hearing room. That will be our second opportunity to hear from the remaining subcommittees on their recommendations. And then we've also scheduled 2 meetings in March, and those will be the meetings at which the full task force members will be voting themselves on recommendations for inclusion in the final report. And those dates, pull them up quick. So Thursday, March 13th at 10:30 a.m. We don't have a location yet, but we're likely going to try to do that in the Hazlitt Armory in Dover. And if needed, we will also meet on Thursday, March 20th, again at 10:30 a.m., likely in the Hazlitt Armory in Dover. And that'll be the last opportunity for the full task force to vote on recommendations to send to the governor and the General Assembly. Any questions on any of that?
I will note that the meetings are open to the public and do have a public comment period too. So even if you're not on full task force, definitely encourage you to attend to listen to the conversation in real time, either virtually or in person. You comment at the end. You go ahead.
Great, thank you. And then as far as what the other subcommittees are working on, I don't think there are any other sort of overlaps that we haven't already talked about.
We did have the one where I think it was the Regulatory and Planning Committee at their last meeting, wanted us to consider the expansion of the Downtown Development District program as an opportunity for finance development. And then the other one was to look at the tax and fee abatement
Yes.
from a local level.
Thank you for reminding me that the second one about tax abatement already appeared on our list.
Yes.
So I didn't add that one, but I had forgotten that other one. So appreciate you keeping us on track. Right. So, and then my last sort of update is, all 5 subcommittees now have produced draft ideas for recommendations. This subcommittee is the first one that is hopefully going to actually vote and pass on recommendations today. So it's really excited and want to extend my appreciation to everybody for being part of this process.
So everyone received the survey that we sent out with ideas, and the ideas were drawn from public comment from prior meetings, as well as some additional reports that have been released to the community by University of Delaware and others. And the purpose of the survey was really to determine really what order we would talk about them today. Thinking that, if there are some items that really rose to the top that we could very easily say it's something that we want to recommend, then, we'd have those, and then we can certainly, talk through the others and,
Hey,
gain
Amy?
Yeah.
I'm getting some feedback. Hey, Brandon Williams, do you mind placing your microphone on mute? That's the only one I see that's not muted that could be providing the feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Preston. Let me know if it continues.
No, that's much better.
Much better. Okay, great. So just saying that the survey that we sent out was really to prioritize the ratings or to prioritize the ideas, thinking that we could hopefully get to a couple that we can gain consensus on quickly. The others were things that we could talk through to determine whether or not we can gain consensus. We want to bring them up. There might be some that we just, want to table for now, or to say, hey, we think this is outside of the scope of either our committee or the the legislation more broadly about the task force, but that we want to elevate it as something maybe as part of the report to encourage the legislature to take a deeper dive and to look into specific things. So there's a couple of different avenues that we could go for the ideas. So this is really meant to be kind of a working session to see, can we get through these? Can we get to any?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so you'll see in column B,
I'm sorry, Caitlin, Deanna speaking for those who are on the phone. Do we have access to this document for those who I didn't bring my glasses?
oh, yes, so,
She said it,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, and thanks to Amy for putting this spreadsheet together. So each sort of policy idea has an item letter. Then there's a description of the idea, notes from our previous meetings, what type of action that recommendation would require, who presented this idea. And then based on the survey that Amy mentioned, I've put in the sort of priority rating. So I sorted this spreadsheet in order of highest priority. So item D, related to increasing base funding for HDF, was rated the highest by this subcommittee at a 4.75 out of 5.
No surprise.
And I also just want to acknowledge quickly that Stephanie Griffin, our Director of Housing Development, is on the line as well. If there are, technical questions that subcommittee members have.
Would you like a motion on each one? Is that how we're gonna do it?
I guess if we're the first committee voting, we should
Yes.
probably set the standard.
Yes, a motion to, we would need a motion to, I guess, approve the recommendation, but before we get there, I mean, right now we have placeholders for, the amount that we would be increasing it to. So my thought was, we want to wordsmith the recommendation so that it is specific. And we need to also, capture who is going to implement the recommendation, whether it's, an agency, the legislature, et cetera. And then whether implementation would require funding, a bill or administrative change. So I just want to make sure that each recommendation hits those items, because our enabling bill indicated that that's how we should be presenting the information.
And you'll have to repeat that. Says Karen Speakman. I think we need to discuss each one. So for instance, this says HDF. Do we want to say more like what we want to give to the SHA in general? What should be for affordable housing?
Doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Right.
pigeonhole it to HDF, but
I agree.
it could be, you can also look at HDF in general as what advantage it's been.
Yeah, there's that whole other discussion, right? So examining all of DSHA's programs, and that's a separate discussion, but I agree. So funding at least.
Funding in general, I wouldn't pigeonhole it to HDF.
I agree.
It's just my opinion.
Do we want to make it specific to DSHA? I know that there have been
Yes.
talks. We do, okay.
DSHA.
What were we gonna say, Amy?
Well, I was just gonna say, there have been discussions about where other housing funds sit, for example, in the Department of Health and Social
I think there's a
Services.
separate discussion.
Separate discussion, okay.
Because to me, this is Kevin, we're getting to how underfunded ESHA's overall programs have been. Because
Correct.
This is trying to level set that.
And I don't know if you've all seen the, Governor Carney has proposed 41 million for housing. His budget.
Okay, since I'm screen sharing,
I'm making notes on that.
okay,
City.
yeah.
No, for the state, and their state budget, supposed to, it was like 15 million in the budget, and it's 23 million with the budget and bond presently. So,
What, 31 million 2 years ago?
this last year, yeah, but that was ARPA money, that wasn't really, so this is actually coming out of the state budget of 41 million, I read it.
And the housing lines pushing 1% of the total budget. State, that would be 60 million.
Well, we know that just based on the numbers that we did is still not gonna get us near where we need to be. So we could target the 60 to start, or we could go
100 million.
Okay, so do we want
I mean,
to,
the number could still be out there, we could do a little more research and figure out, but maybe say it. I don't know.
Back in the envelope that I did, it was $100 million a year just to sort of
Reach what the number of,
the maximum number of realistic units you can build in here, given the tax credit equity.
that's only considers tax credit equity. It doesn't consider
level.
or other
or
things.
other types,
Single
yeah.
family health development, so. Right,
So are we committed to saying that this is for the SHA specifically?
Yes.
Do we need something else then to talk about staffing at the SHA to handle this additional money?
I think there's a separate suggestion in this list.
yes, there is
For
another,
talent and, income, staffing.
So could we have this for the production of affordable housing
Yes.
versus so that way?
And
it
affordable
pulls it
again
away
is that
from-
820 for homeownership and 80% of AMI for rental, as I recall. Did we define
Let's
affordable
be
housing
specific, yeah.
somewhere else?
all right, I'm
Maybe like earlier.
wordsmithing live. So what I have so far is the state should appropriate X million to DSHA annually to support production of affordable housing.
Defined at 20% AMI for homeownership and 80%
Defined
for rent.
For rent.
Okay, defined as,
I mean, potentially, I don't know, I mean.
That could just be a placeholder.
Right,
now
right,
as it
because the next thing
works.
coming, I can. And you could say up to 120% of like forever.
okay, with units that are affordable to households making up to 120% AMI for homeownership and up to 80% AMI for rental. Period.
And well, and you want to just an index to inflation?
Yeah, so is the inflation index enough? I mean, I think we should have some sort of lever, maybe,
It's not really indexed to inflation, it's indexed to income. Because area median income changes annually. And
No,
80% of area median income changes annually.
precedent to make sure that there's some sort of lever to increase the 100 million annually, so it doesn't stagnate.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The amount of money. Yeah, got it.
I mean, we could, if we want to take into consideration the 1% proposal that is already out there from the state budget, it could be indexed to the growth of the state budget.
Yeah, let's do that.
that could go down at some point, yeah.
Yeah, so inflation. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I'll put a note here, we might want to research the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Over time.
Do you agree that the X million should be 100, or are we still batting that around?
What is the budget total is?
I think it's 7 billion, so it's gonna be 70 million.
Just so I go back to my number, just multifamily alone, just using multifamily, using 4% or 9% credit, just to do 650 units a year. Based upon deals that we've done the last couple of years. Again, rough numbers, nothing perfect size. But based upon the cost of what we've done so far.
That all the money that comes from the state.
Yeah, right, we would need 100 million to do 650 units a year. We need 100 million. Based on what we spend on the units that we built. 650, that doesn't include the for sale housing or anything. That's just 650 rentals. And that doesn't include rehabs.
Okay, so are we gonna do a specific number or a percentage of the budget?
Now, I should throw another kink or another option in the wheel here. We had also discussed,
Can I just ask a follow-up question? How much does that? Does that 100 million
Yeah, of course.
include leverage?
Yeah, of course.
Because if we're talking about, let's say we go to 1%, that gets to 70 million, we still can think about the amount that we leverage.
Of course, that's big, it's big numbers. Big numbers. But I would want to go back one more step too, is that, again, we've had some studies and we had the 16,000 number. And I think, and again, I don't know what went into that. But we've had some discussions just at the county, starting with county conversations, and it's that 16,000 number really a real number. Meaning, again, maybe I'm naive and I'm not looking closely for really 16, there's not 16,000 people that are homeless. 16,000 people that are cost burden, right? And those 16,000 people that are cost burden, are they folks that are, again, another conversation we had is about, again, the regionality of where we live, where we are, Jersey, Pennsylvania, right? How much of that really are, you can say it, Delawareans versus are we putting people because it's easier to come here and get, I've heard an argument, it's easier to come here and get certain federal support, and it takes a lot longer in Jersey, a lot more in Pennsylvania, so people come here and get the support. They come here to live right affording these people. So my point is, or I think one of the recommendations from the county is they need a more comprehensive study. Really truly. Better need. And then based upon those units that are needed, what's it, how much substitute do you need? Unless, but if everyone here says, you know, hey, look, the studies we have, it's accurate. I'm living by it. You know, it's really thoughtfully done. People did a deep dive. Then, okay, well, if you need 16,000 units to build 650 a year, using leverage at the end, it's gonna take $100 million. Minimum. And that doesn't touch any of the single family stuff or homeownership stuff. Doesn't touch. Just builds tax credit. Leverage is much more. Now you can then argue the 4% dollars could be fixed income. The 4% can be done. You know, 4% works very well with some, you know, 120% median income and 50% median income. People creates that combination of income. So you're not. This isn't just to put, you know, affordable housing in somebody's specific district. Things that we talked about, it's very much a mixed income and using the 4% fee. Because that's where you really need the money, is in the 4%. Because we only get enough to do 3 deals at 9. So you have your food. So again, my question before we get into the numbers, how confident we are with studies?
I think to some extent that pulls into just below D, we have H, which is identify the cost of increasing the supply of the housing, which might get us to whether it's 100 million, 150 million, 70 million, or what have you. But could we combine those two, say increase it by this information that we need to have?
I would argue no.
Yeah, I mean,
think-
honestly, we're in a crisis, right? We need to make a decision now based on the information that we have. So I think we come up with a number based on the current data that we have. And I know that one of the recommendations is for us to do a study to validate, you know, are these numbers true and correct? Should we be looking at different data sets? When we started all these conversations months ago, we were asking about additional data. So I say we also follow up into a study within the next 1 to 2 years and maybe we just level set based on the new study. But I don't think we should kick the can down the road to make sure that everything is 100% accurate to come up with the right dollar. I think we need to make a decision now based off of the information that we have to produce more units. 3 years down the line, we can adjust that number based on new data and information.
And Matt, your number, right, that the Housing Alliance comes up with about the cost for those are people living in Delaware.
Other lines of the
Regardless of where they
numbers.
came from, Delaware, they're living in Delaware now.
Agreed.
Situation.
Agreed.
And the only way
And
to
then the-
leave that is more units.
The overall projection is like 4,300 a year. You know, if you include what we need now and what we project for.
Then to build 650, we're comfortable with 650. Again, this is high back of the envelope calculation, right? And work out this 100 million.
I think it's both and. So I think it's we come up with the numbers. We've been talking about 100 million, so let's just say 100 million. We also get an updated study, right, with new data points. And then if we need to adjust the 100 million based on that study, then we do that in 2 years, right? So it can be a both.
Right, or if we have some, in an interim study, we want to do a little bit more to come up with another number, we could do that. But
Yeah, because I think the 100 million is frankly, I just don't think the 100 million is going to be enough. Because if we are talking about it just for affordable rental and that we needed over 30 years to catch up with the number of units we need today, then we're not including homeownership in that. We're not including transitional units. We're not including, you know, all of those other units then.
And then, I mean, I think we should also keep in mind, and that's why I was asking about leverage, because we're not expecting the state to absorb 100% of the affordable housing construction costs, right? So this increase is, we're asking the state to put in, but we are also going to be looking at other opportunities to leverage funding, right? We're talking about how can we take more advantage of federal funding that's available and things of that nature. So I think when we're talking about affordable housing production, we need to look at it more holistically. And yes, we need the state to contribute more, but what are other ways that we can get other institutions and federal government to leverage, to contribute additional funding to leverage, right?
No, I like that, and I think if we have the ability within our recommendations to present, you know, the 100 million and then say, and, you know, it is the state's contribution, but we anticipate that that would leverage an additional X number. I think that that would go over a lot more smoothly
Yes.
than, hey, just give us the money.
Exactly.
Because I don't know that every legislator is going to recognize the amount of leverage that has to go in for this type of development.
Okay, so real quick, I'm gonna read our draft recommendation as it is right now. So we have, the state should appropriate $100 million to DSHA annually to support production of affordable housing with units that are affordable to households making up to 120% AMI for homeownership and up to 80% AMI for rental, and index to the growth of the state budget.
I would add after leveraging, and we'll get the number for you, leveraging XX million of federal dollars to our state.
Okay, so where in the sentence would I?
Right after that, we're
Okay.
asking 100 million leverage, which will leverage XX dollars of federal funding.
Is it all federal or there?
No.
Or you got
Private,
whatever, federals,
Other
private,
government,
government,
private.
We'll leverage.
leveraging X dollars. So that way, that number's be way bigger than mine.
Leveraging X million dollars from other sources.
Of capital.
Sources of capital. Okay. To DSHA annually to support. Okay, and index, I should probably specify future increases. Index,
Well, do we want to index it to the state budget or
I
do
don't think
we?
state budget, I think it should be inflation or some other number, like,
Well, I think initially we think there should be some sort of lever to whatever study we want to do in the next 2 to 3 years, right? So there should be almost a step increase based on, it's
Yeah.
kind of like what they do, when they do wage surveys and then they, you know, reevaluate wages based on how far back they think they are. I don't know what the appropriate language for that is, but like we want them to study what the need is and then ratchet that up to meet that need with a minimum of minimally do it to inflation.
inflation.
So you got two things going on though. You have the need to produce the house, then you have the cost of the housing that's gonna go in, you know, unfortunately due to natural disasters like we're experiencing right now, that's gonna throw those costs out, cost of insurance. So there's gonna be these other things that are not even really gonna be tied to inflation. I think we're gonna see huge jumps.
Markets rate.
Yeah, within our industry.
Yeah. I don't know, but I think we got the gist of it at this point, let's, and then we can fine tune, we got to present it to the committee and then it has to be presented to legislators, so that means, so, you know.
Tweaks on, like,
Exactly.
Say future industry adjustments, just overall. Because it could be, whether it's funding, it could be natural disasters, just industry all overall. But I think it's important to keep it in there. And that's kind of wide open. So
Yeah,
kind of-
is it the construction industry, what you're saying?
I would just put industry standard like overall, because it's just, it could be construction, it could be natural disasters, it could be, you know. I mean, it could be a multitude of things.
The consumer price index to housing.
Yeah.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, index future increases to the
Consumer price index.
wait, is there a specific one for housing?
Well, it's overall, consumer price index, so that's overall, right, so it's cost of living.
Index future
Because
increases.
that kind of encapsulates everything.
The 44, as of 2024, 44% of that index was housing.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Okay, so consumer price index.
Okay, so then we still need to deal with this X here.
Personally, I'm not in favor of adding that clause leveraging X millions. Let's just explain that to legislators or other parties when they ask about it. That complicates the sentence and kind of junks it up, and I'm afraid it'll confuse people rather than helping them. Like, there's a lot of things we know we want to do with this 100 million that's not spelled out in the sentence. One of those is leveraging dollars from private developers, leveraging dollars from the federal government. And I don't think it needs, personally, I don't think it needs, should be in the sentence.
Yeah, we can put that in the rationale underneath the recommendation.
So, yeah. Good point.
Oh, man. Oh, gosh.
Preston, can you still hear us?
Password is not incorrect. I just-
I think the honest point though, I think you gotta know, so we're not asking the state to this money, you're saying that there's a carrot at the end of the day, if you put the investment in, there's a return to it. So I don't know if it needs to be in the recommendation, but that's somewhere within the narrative, so they understand that we're not just asking to subsidize it ourselves. There's significant other subsidy that's gonna happen, because
Figure out.
sure, there has to be the narrative somewhere that goes along.
Yeah,
I think in the notes section, we can say this funding to the DSHA should, will be utilized to leverage additional funding from other sources such as the federal government, private developers, and other parties that support the construction of affordable housing in Delaware or something like that.
Listen, it's a big number, so I think it's our way to attract federal subsidy to our state that we're able to use, but we're not getting. It's kind of like, as far as I know, TSHA is like nowhere near the bond cap, right? So we have all this tax exempt bond financing ability, we're nowhere near the cap that value will bond.
right.
Okay, so if we take that clause out, it reads as follows. The state should appropriate $100 million to DSHA annually to support production of affordable housing, in parentheses, with units that are affordable to households making up to 120% AMI for homeownership and up to 80% AMI for rental, and index future increases to the consumer price index. And then obviously the type of action is legislative budgetary, so the legislature would need to put that into the budget, they would need to pass it, the governor would need to sign it, and then DSHA would need to get the funding out the door. Okay. Do we feel like we're ready to vote on this one?
Sure.
Okay, I am going to insist on an actual roll call vote for every recommendation. So I'm just gonna go in my list, which isn't alphabetical. Okay, actually, no, we need motions. Somebody needs to make motion.
Make a motion.
Thanks, Fred. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Karen. Okay, Caitlin's gonna do the roll call vote.
Okay, Amy,
Yes.
Fred,
Yes.
Marva,
Yes.
Deanna,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
yes, Kevin,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Wes.
Yes.
All members voting in favor. We have 9 yes. We have a recommendation. Okay. The next one we have for consideration is item H, and that was the idea to identify the cost of increasing the supply of affordable housing. So, over to you.
And this is to really think about whether how much beyond that back of the envelope 100 million we're gonna need specifically for other housing types other than multifamily, like.
So are we suggesting that research should be done? Is that what?
Yeah.
The idea
That's
should be
right.
research, to notify the cost, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Logistical question, who would be doing the research?
I think it'd be under DSHA's authority, but it could be a consultant.
Okay. Oh my goodness, I don't know what you just happened there.
Well, yeah.
I think we need to be careful with how we message some of this stuff, because the first recommendation is, $100 million. Now this one saying, hey, we're gonna need more than $100 million. They're gonna think that they got it done with $100 million. What, you want more than $100 million? So, I mean, that's just for consideration.
No, I think the whole logic has to be laid, this is Karen again, the whole logic has to be laid out, right? What's the rationale?
Right, yes.
you know, here's why, right? Here's what they call the individual, whatever.
It's just sometimes folks choose to hear what they want to hear and they're gonna hear, it's 100 million, you got it, you're done. Right, so, yeah,
It'd be like
so the
if I get
messaging,
100 million, I think, you know, but Matt Myers has put education, affordable housing, and healthcare as his top 3 things.
So maybe
Hold 'em
are
to-
you recommending for the idea to say research the cost of increasing the supply of the
yeah, just so that we.
out, just say annually or so that way people can't jump to the conclusion of, oh, yeah, we did it, but just doing further research, making it project.
Yeah,
I'm gonna start typing. So, and we're saying DSHA or potentially a consultant they would hire. So DSHA should
Research the
Research.
cost of increasing the housing supply, I'm sorry, increasing the supply of affordable housing annually. for 30 years. So just take me out of the picture.
Okay, so the 30 years was really only in there because we thought we'd need 100 million for 30 years to meet the
job.
backlog. So I don't know that,
Well, just, you know,
should we do like an annual index of the cost? Or should we, do,
to the 4,300, whatever the number is, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, like I feel like we need to know it, and then we would want it updated, maybe when the housing needs assessment is done too, so that it's another layer, not just the need, but the cost.
Do you mean this house needs, I mean, the needs assessment was done in 2023, so they're not really required to do one unless we require them to do one. What, another 5 years or something?
Yeah, so the 2023 gives us housing needs through 2030. So
I think the cost determination should be done at the same time the housing needs. If you're coming up with a number, you might as well come up with the cost.
So can we use that needs assessment and just, maybe it's reviewing that needs assessment and then if there needs to be other assessment of the needs, then they do that too. You know what I mean? It may not have been as comprehensive as we would like, for instance, I'm not sure, but I mean, I have to go back and look at it. Maybe Kaylee could, but you know, it's.
yeah, we didn't put a cost to how much.
No, I know.
Yeah.
So, but are the numbers, do you feel the number is correct, or is it including people? Is something that's needed to people to buy houses? Is it including, you know, all of everything, or was it simply looking at people who are overburdened at that stage? At that stage,
I mean, we have a lot of things, almost 400 pages long,
yeah.
but, you know, we looked at how many people are cost burdened, but there was no calculation of like how much subsidy it would take to get them to where they're not cost burdened.
Right.
We did an analysis of the affordability of homes that are for sale. Came back, unless you're making more than 120% AMI, you're not buying a house. But so could a recommendation say that future needs assessments that we do, like our next one and going forward, should identify the cost? Is
Yeah.
that what we're talking about?
I think we're taking two different things, talking about doing a cost assessment on the one that exists.
That already exists, okay.
And then in future ones, it would be the need assessment plus the cost assessment. I don't know that. I think it were good if we just said that we need to do a cost analysis on the existing needs assessment. What do you think?
I think you catch it on the next one. So
Yeah,
think about it.
whoever writes the next one. we
Yeah,
would
yeah,
use.
I think you wanna catch on, then to try to go back retro, because how many years are you into your current one?
Just two, just one.
Just one or two?
A little over 1 year since it's
Okay,
been
but then
published.
think about it, once you put it out to RFP, once you select someone, then you're gonna, a whole year go by, you're gonna be almost on the tail end of your last housing needs assessment. So maybe you just get ready for the next one and go forward.
I agree with that, having been the person who had to do the RFP for the one that we already have.
Well, so then maybe there's a group of stakeholders that takes that need assessment and tries to put a number to it or something. I think you need a number.
I
Yeah, I'd love to have a number sooner than
Waiting.
2030.
Right, yeah. So can the recommendation be to identify the cost of increasing the supply of affordable housing according to the need assessment completed in 2023?
Again, I just think about my legislator, and someone says, give me $100 million, I want to see a piece of paper that says, why I need $100 million.
Why is it better?
Yeah, that's my thought too. But I think we should also request that it be included in future RFPs for the needs assessments. So I do think it is the two parts. We want to know what the cost is based on the current needs assessment, and then for future needs assessments and be included in the needs assessment, the cost.
You also want to make sure, you want to start figuring out what are the number of units for those who can graduate to homeownership of the subsidy needed there.
Yeah, I think it's, we might want to think about like how much in the description, in the recommendation itself, or in the description or rationale, we want to get into the types of things we want them to look at, like, you know, how much subsidy is needed to get people into homeownership. But, you know, either whether it's down payment settlement cost assistance or direct subsidy, and, you know, for those people that units aren't available and they're in rental situations, how much subsidy would be needed to help them, you know, have a more affordable rental, you know, it's a partial voucher or whatever it is to help people. But the question, how much do we want to prescribe that versus how much do we want to leave that open? Or do we want to put it in the recommendation or as a add-on? These are the types of things we'd like to know.
I think you can be generic with it, because one of the things, again, that I don't know, just negative there, there's all just basic economics of housing is that if you increase supply, then demand stays stagnant, then rents are going to drop because you're going to oversupply. So just build, theoretically can make things more affordable. Just general economics.
Yeah.
Now, our problem, again, I believe, is we've got this regional, again, as it relates to Newcastle County, we've got this regional dynamic that I think creates some problems. But I'm not an economist.
But then you have a land use.
I had an opinion, and then you have land use, which is
Keeping the spigot being turned on.
Right.
And the regulatory and permitting subcommittee is looking at that. And I will say, everybody on that subcommittee agrees that zoning reform is needed. The point of contention right now is, do we do it with carrots, incentives, or sticks? And, you know, does the state mandate it, or do local governments get to choose? So that still remains to be hashed out, but I do anticipate at least some type of zoning reform recommendation coming out of that. All right, so I typed up something, I'm gonna read it off to see if it's getting at what we wanted to. DSHA should research the cost of increasing the supply of affordable housing to meet the housing needs identified in the 2023 statewide housing needs assessment. Additionally, I spelled that wrong, future needs assessments should provide cost estimates for addressing any housing needs identified. Sounds good. You ready for a vote? Let's accept the motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, so we've got Karen and Deanna. All right, so I'm gonna go through my list again. All right, Amy.
In favor.
Okay, Fred,
Yes.
Marva,
Yes.
yes, Preston,
Yes.
Matt,
yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Wes.
Yes.
Okay, we have 9 yeses. The recommendation passes.
Are there any new ideas? The only thing that makes me uncomfortable with this is like, I kind of want to see every recommendation that's in its entirety before deciding how committed I am to any one recommendation. So like, I'm worried we're gonna get to some really good stuff near the bottom and we're gonna be like, but we already approved all these other recommendations. Are there any new stuff that's in addition to what you sent us last week? Like
Um,
new ideas?
the only new ideas were the couple that you had put in your comments, Preston, and then Karen, you had shared a few items as well. So if it's helpful, I can screen share those items.
I mean, I guess it doesn't matter in the sense that I guess we can make as many recommendations as we want. So it's not like we're making approving a recommendation now that's using one of our slots for recommendations that we can't use later. So if that's not the case, then I guess this process works.
Yeah, our only limitation really is time. And it's almost 2:00, so.
Yeah, well, don't we have another meeting too?
We do not currently have another subcommittee meeting scheduled. It would be tough it would be very tough. Almost impossible.
Let's keep with the current, or my opinion is we should just keep with the current process then.
Send things all back out, and if we could call a meeting, just sort of, it's last minute, we need to discuss this.
Yeah, I guess the question is, do we know where we're gonna be on this agenda, either February 6th or February 20th to present our recommendations?
We don't, that's a great question. So I think it's gonna depend on our respective subcommittee chairs' availability. So for example, I know Jerry Heisler, who is chairing manufactured housing, he's going away on a biking trip to Vietnam for 3 weeks. So I wanna
Congratulations.
yeah, so I wanna schedule him for February 20th because I'm not sure he'll even be in the country on February 6th. I know that's not a helpful answer, but I mean, it really is just gonna depend on the 5 different chairs and how ready they feel at the end of this round of meetings. But if it's helpful briefly, we can kind of go through what we have and reassess it.
I think the policy, I think the procedure to go through what we said was important is good.
Okay.
There are a lot of things that I said I would like more discussion on, so I voted on 3s and 4s, just to share. So I think we'll just get to it. If we don't get to it another time, I think we'll call a meeting.
Okay, so then the next one up is item C, develop a statewide accelerator program for residential projects that meet certain density and affordability criteria. Program would include but not be limited to expedited review and permits, fee reductions, waivers, assistance with financing and grants, and study and identify where actual bottlenecks occur in the process to address misconceptions.
And this came directly from University of Delaware's working with the Delaware State Planning Association on on a report as well. So this is where that came from.
Does this fall under us or regulatory?
Full of those.
Yeah, and
I think they may have some on the
I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't. So.
yeah, so one of their potential recommendations right now is to basically take the Ready in 6 program for economic development and open it up for housing. And in my mind, that's what this accelerator program is, but
It doesn't hurt
Well,
for both of us, I guess.
Yeah, because that shows alignment.
I agree, yeah, if there's duplication, I think that just makes it all the more urgent to address that issue.
So we heard from a lot of developers, and I'm sure Preston can back me up, that one of the biggest problems is the process, whether it's through the county, with the state involved, with DelDOT or DENRAC at some point, and those kind of things, and that it's just, it's just onerous, just, and costs are then put on the developers. Right, so I guess, I think certainly expedited reviews and permits, and then, I don't know whether you get into fee reductions and
It's all gonna happen at the local level, that's what that's referring to, that's gonna be the growth. How can you recommend something at a state level, which operationally happens at the local level? Let's get that.
Right, and where would this program live? Which state agency?
I don't know, question, but.
Could we, instead of just, But do we want to maybe hold on this one until we see what the recommendation comes out of planning and regulatory and then sign on to theirs if we are in alignment?
I think that makes sense because kind of like what Kevin's saying is like, you know, municipalities all balance their budgets on fees that they get. For the state to say, no, you gotta reduce or do whatever, they're just gonna say no. So it's a good idea in theory, but I think I'd like to hear how it would be practiced before we would recommend it. Unless we're just saying something that doesn't make sense. So if the other committee has a practical application as to how it would be in place, and it makes sense, then we can just always sign on to it. So you've got to explain how it's gonna work.
It'd be similar to the DDD. So like we have a project in Middletown and we got the town to sign off on the DDD form. That's the town saying, we're gonna waive these fees now. Confirm the projects in the DDD, so it would be like,
Any affordable housing.
right, state confirming, okay, and then local municipality confirming, okay, this is eligible for the accelerator program. Here's what you should look at municipality and say, we agree, you get these things.
Yeah, and the municipalities are defining what those incentives are instead of, yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
By the way, that $100 million we had in the one, it had nothing really, again, it was respond existing affordable, so it really had nothing to do with some increase in meter. So things that would just expand potentially above with $100 million to reduce theoretically. So this has to do it easier. This can just add some more than the 650 units.
Oh, absolutely, as will density. Philosophically, I think that we have to get away from putting costs for improvements on new development, and we have to get back to, property taxes, honestly, and I think how we ever get that message across the municipalities, I don't know, but, new development can, or maybe we move it down to just affordable housing, but it does go across a larger and larger band of people that need improvements for water, like for instance, if downtown is already planning to improve this road, that development improvement shouldn't be put on the developer. There's things like that occur.
That's across whether you get it affordable or not. That's
Correct,
hard to argue. But back to these things that we're talking about, property tax, school tax, maintenance, things like that. But Preston, I'd be interested to hear from you. I mean, what do you think it's an incentive for the state from an income tax perspective that would help you?
An incentive for them to do what?
An income tax side. So obviously you pay, you earn money and you pay a state income tax. That's what the state controls. They don't control whether the property tax piece.
No, I mean, if we're talking about the accelerator program, it's got to be done at the local level predominantly. I mean, the state agencies are part of the problem, but in Sussex County, they're less of a problem than the 15-month sit there and twiddle your thumbs that you do every time you submit an application to Sussex County. So I think leaving it loose like this, I'm fine with this language exactly as it reads right now. We will determine later and with the other committees specifically what happens, but just recommending that there be some sort of accelerator program, and that, it address the fee reductions, certain waivers. Assuming that we're still talking about this particular recommendation, I'm fine leaving it as currently written. And I don't think we want to get more specific than that.
I think my only concern is, the enabling legislation for the task force wants us to identify who's gonna implement things. Can we at least say, the state should work with local governments and other stakeholders to develop an accelerator program?
So then, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, so yeah, you can say that.
Or the state planning department, because they already, work with them, right?
And they do, yeah. Okay, so which is a state agency, so the Office of State Planning Coordination should work with local governments and other stakeholders to develop a statewide accelerator program, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, perfect.
If you wanna be specific, you can say the Office of State Planning Coordination. But this aligns with their mission.
Yeah. All right, so let me read the full thing out. So the Office of State Planning Coordination should work with local governments and other stakeholders to develop a statewide accelerator program for residential projects that meet certain density and affordability criteria. And I'm gonna wordsmith a little bit. The program should include, but not be limited to, expedited reviews, permits, fee reductions, and or waivers, assistance with financing and grants, and a study to identify where the actual bottlenecks are in the process.
I don't think we need to have that to address those concerns.
Okay. Process.
Those last 3 words. Period.
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
Okay.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Kevin.
All right. Okay, Amy,
In favor?
Fred,
Yes.
Marva,
Yes.
Deanna, Preston,
Yes.
Matt,
Yeah.
Kevin,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Wes.
Yes.
Great, we have 9 votes in favor. Moving along. All right, the next item is very similar in my mind. Create more incentives to promote infill development and redevelopment in state strategies levels 1 and 2.
Letter is done.
A. And just for reference, this same sort of idea has been talked about in regulatory and permitting as well as construction. And I think even in manufactured housing, there's been a lot of discussion about, you know, there's no incentive for a developer to develop in level 1 versus level 4. But from the state's perspective, obviously, we want the development in 1 and 2 and not to be in 4.
I think broadly, I like it. I wonder, does it have enough context there about what those incentives might be? Did we want to add any? I know Matt mentioned earlier the idea of reducing state income taxes for developers in the construction of affordable housing in levels 1 and 2. That was on the table. I heard, I can't remember who, potentially reducing the share that affordable housing developers have to pay for the road improvements.
Yeah, but it could be like, I guess, the fee reductions and the waiver.
Now we're getting into the
Yeah,
smaller
we wanna get
aspects
into
of
that. That's
what
what I
is
was
this really
gonna
gonna change? I mean,
Because
the 100 million in the first 3 alone are.
Well, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking more about who's working on Ready in 6 model, because my understanding is that Ready in 6 also pertains to infrastructure improvements, so that businesses can be ready to basically come in and build in 6 months. So if we apply that to housing, the infrastructure should be there as well, right? So that may actually just fall under Ready in 6, and I don't know necessarily to get the waivers.
So thinking about leaving this to regulatory and permitting.
Yeah, I think so. It should be the case for that.
Okay.
But we should just put a little, plus sign next to their recommendation as they presented.
Great.
Okay, so the next one is item Q, identify specific housing revenue sources. So some examples include Inflation Reduction Act, legislative require that any AG funds received from housing-related settlements be given to DSAJ for administration. Taking a percentage of marijuana funds earmarked for affordable housing or support services, and then 1/10 of 1% on federal taxable income to be earmarked for affordable housing, as they do in Colorado. One update, I did reach out to Dana Cobb. She is one of our full task force members. And I asked her about Inflation Reduction Act money, and my recollection is that the IRA money that DENREC received is tied specifically to a potential, bless you, statewide building code study.
So they're the managing agency of the IRA funding that came to Medicare. And aren't there multiple pots of funding through the IRA? For like greenhouse gas reduction, things like that? I understand that there's multiple sources of funding, so is it just one source of funding?
I'm really not sure.
Residential.
Yeah, my takeaway was that there isn't really any money that they have that isn't already spoken for or, related to something that's for their wheelhouse.
Could it not be something more like this? I think this is trying to identify specific sources for housing. So I would think we keep it to the state, but maybe there's also a statement that includes, trying to access every federal dollar possible or something, that could be used for housing.
Pro-housing grants. I mean, that was actually mentioned in the enabling legislation as one of the things that this subcommittee was supposed to look at. And I know that the latest round, already happened, but it may come back next year.
I mean, I just think about other potential sources of funding. Maybe this is a conversation down the line, once more research is done, but does DHSS have, sources of funding? And I mean, when I talk about, we need to look at this holistically, that interagency council, again, because we talked about like transitional housing and stuff like that, are there other state entities that we have access to funding or could get access to funding that helps with housing production? So I think we should be thinking more broadly in terms of what other agencies we have access to housing production.
That makes sense.
So that's, I don't know if it's an addition to, or, so
In
yeah,
addition to.
yeah, because there are evidently pots of money in other departments for housing that the coordination is not really well done. And it's improving, but, so that's something that we sort of suggested to Matt Myers,
So it would be nice if
transition team.
there was like an analysis of all of the state funding that could be used towards housing. Then coordinate all of that money.
Housing
to
development
work
and
together.
services, I guess, yeah.
But
Just
then
like
you also-
weatherization, and they're different, they're not all under DSHA.
Right, that's why you have to do the analysis. You have to go
Right.
statewide to see, some may be under the Department of Health,
Right.
under housing. But then we have like listed potential revenue sources, like under the marijuana. Did we consider gaming, tapping into gaming? Right?
I mean, I still think we shouldn't take realty transfer taxes off.
So those are all statewide potential money makers that could be given out through housing solution. Identify the ones that we want to pursue.
Lottery.
Trying to come up with a sentence. So the state should identify all state funds.
Or federally,
Is this trying to identify where the 100 million is coming from?
no. This is an addition, like
We wanna-
DENREC would get money for weatherization or,
Mhm.
it's like, where are all the other pots of money that relate to housing? That either are state funded or federally funded. Yeah, so that there's a push to get back to having an interagency council on housing or an office on homeless and housing that relates to, or with under DSHA that pulls all that together, so coordination is better and that there's agreement on it.
Example, when the ERA money came through back in 2020, there were so many things that could have been done with it, that if you had collaborated with other agencies that have been doing with affordable housing. But when DSHA took on that money, they didn't really have the capacity at that time to really do it themselves. So I think knowing when that money comes in, what can be done with it, kind of utilizing those resources.
Right, if there's money for housing services under the, whatever it is, DSHH, but HHS, so, you know, that, how did that all work? And, you know,
Right, they're giving us money. for repairs.
Right, right. So, you know,
So it wasn't something to think about.
yes, yes.
Did you catch on?
I'm trying, all right, so. So what I have is the state should identify all federal and state funds across executive branch agencies that can be used to support housing to coordinate and maximize the use of those funds. Is that at least close to what we mean?
That are being used. And are being used and can be used.
Oh, yeah, are being used, they can't be used, that adds to it, yeah.
It can be used to support housing. Coordinate and maximize
The availability and use of
Or housing, you have nothing to do.
And then I'm just gonna take the rest of the stuff and stick it in our notes column.
paragraph.
Control Z, Control Z.
Take it back.
It may have
Friend.
replaced.
Good idea, my life controls.
I know, right? All right, well, I have a copy of it, so I can get that back.
And then if there's something separate, when I say identifying sources of funding, then the state budget, you know, there are sources of money like the marijuana, like gaming, like lottery, like help provide
Tolls.
Do we want
tolls. I
to,
heard that's a no-no, but yeah, with tolls,
Rich loves that.
yeah,
I feel like that should be a separate recommendation.
yeah, I do,
Yeah.
I would agree.
So let's vote on this one
Aren't those
and then
already
we'll add.
spoken for?
A lot of them are, but some of them,
What, minimize the general fund?
yeah, yeah. There are earmarks for other programs, but earmarks money for housing.
Okay, so let's do this one and then we will add a row and.
Okay. All right,
Need a motion?
Make a motion.
okay, Karen motion,
Second.
Marva second. All right, I'm gonna go around the room this time. Okay, Amy,
In favor?
Karen,
Yes.
Matt?
Yeah.
Fred,
Yes.
Deanna,
yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Marva,
Yes.
Wes,
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
We have 9 yeses. Done 4. That's great. All right, so now we're inserting a new row.
So then we want to do another one, this other one, that's really is two.
Well, I just don't think it'll have an item letter on it. Right?
Yeah, I just created a row right here, so.
Or whatever, like the one that was two.
Yeah, that one was the identify specific housing revenue sources.
Or identify specific revenue sources for housing. The point is that want something that set aside those, that does not include those on the budget. I mean, it's coming up on pulling the resources in, but it, like, for instance, there presently is the $3 or 3%, $3 for every deed. Agents, that money is provided to each, yeah.
We may need to speak up now that the air has kicked on. I can tell Wes was struggling to hear because you did the same thing that I do every time I have a meeting in this building. I have to put my ear up to hear.
Sorry, it's Karen. I was saying that, we want something that's, what's what I want?
earmark.
Yeah.
or, and replica part just constantly is. Yeah, dedicated source of revenue, thank you.
Identify dedicated sources of revenue.
Who is doing the identifying?
That's my point, is that it's gotta be something new. I can go back to the old, but that's already in the general fund, the general fund, revenue capacity from out. So to me, the next, you know,
The marijuana.
yeah.
Could that be
Somebody
added
told
to the
us.
meeting?
But let's say you don't get the 100 million, right? So the next governor comes in and only says, I'm going to get 4 million. for this issue. So again, having a dedicated source of revenue.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, I think it's a great thing, but what, I mean, it's gotta be something future, it's gotta be, we don't know what it's gonna be. It's gonna be a future revenue source.
So that you could say that any future revenue source would be earmarked for out there.
So when they legalize cocaine,
That's a good question, I don't, yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking maybe the consultant was doing the cost assessment. I think it would be good to have a third party do that, so that it doesn't get really political, and they can just come up with recommendations for the powers that be to consider.
Okay, so they would be identifying potential new revenue sources. I do think that would be within their capability. The reason I say that is group policy was the consultant that prepared our last needs assessment. And I remember Heidi, the principal, making a comment about how it is very common in other states to use the realty transfer tax towards housing, and how sort of unique we are here in Delaware that we
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, and I mean, another reason why I think it should be someone who's independent is that they can bring an outside perspective and kind of do the evaluation of what other states are doing and present with a recommendation and comments. Cause I mean, especially if it's, you know, if it gets political, you have to be able to speak to them.
Wasn't that in here that also started about the really transfer tax being like charging a larger amount for
Yes,
higher?
yeah, that's,
So maybe
it is on the list.
Yeah, do a semicolon and
Or just
dedicate
maybe
a portion of
let's
this
table this
for.
and then. Or,
I
you know,
I don't like that one there, I'll be honest. I think it should be more broad and left just for someone to research and find out. I would rather not put the realty transfer tax in there.
I think it also harm you. Does anybody know the numbers that these provide? If it doesn't provide 100 million, then
it's a lot. It really transfers like 600 million.
so then the pie of the budget,
Affordable housing.
they could say, well, 10 million's already cycled up, the rest of it's going to this.
All of the companies that incorporate in Delaware. Does any of that money go, where does that,
What
does
about
it go
creation
towards
of
providing
tax
housing?
credit donations?
Yeah.
To affordable housing. Right.
Right, but still,
Would
you're
benefit
incorporating.
the donator with a tax credit.
Delaware.
There are
should be
people
able
that
to-
You're already getting a tax deduction. Which is you can add towards it.
So there are other things like this. Maybe if we put the resource stuff all together in discussion. There was. Yeah, it's a billion.
So
We won't forget. We won't forget this, the dependable sources, so let's.
Okay.
Just
So,
leave it in draft and.
all right, well, yeah, we really didn't, I didn't write anything.
Yep.
I feel like we got consensus. Okay, so we did Q. Okay, the next one is E. So E was identifying the financial products needed from HDF to address housing needs. Some examples include, and then it provides a list.
Maybe could we direct Delaware State Housing Authority to examine the existing programs with stakeholders and develop programs that meet the diverse housing needs like that?
And I think this one also ties really closely to F, where we say create additional opportunities for DSHA developers and community-based organizations to collaborate.
Okay.
And that includes getting feedback on programs funded by the agency and HDF. I mean, obviously, it's got a lot more things there, but
Yeah, I thought F was more geared to like training or sort of not really diving into the program, but we can broaden it to include that. That says, you know, not learning, I mean, you know, it would be more than learning opportunities, it's more of a discussion. You wanna analyze these programs. Are they working? Are they not working? What else is needed? Right?
and we can, I mean, we can separate that piece out, so we can delete it from that. So it'd be its own standalone. But it is, you know, so that they both are included in one spot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I think a clear statement where Delaware State Housing Authority needs to examine their existing programs and with the stakeholders, because that definitely gets left out, I'm gonna be frank with you.
And we can use that same list of stakeholders.
So we have to always react to what they're proposing as opposed to like, let's work this, what's a good program. Yeah.
So would it work to say DSHA should identify the financial products needed from the HDF to address the housing needs in consultation with?
Who says the HDF exists and we have to put $1 million?
I don't know that's the HDF, I think I would say example.
All
I think-
housing advocates, we think they need to be at the table or at least invited to discuss. You know, because like these products are opened up and I don't know where those recommendations came from. And sometimes they just don't work, or they have requirements that require other agencies that don't have capacity.
And Matt Heckles may well do this, but I think that I would hope that. Yeah, and it's hard to know, it's like an interesting point right now, so it's sort of like, is this something when in legislature, do we really need to say that? I don't know, you know? Legislation. Maybe periodically, maybe, you know, Delaware State Housing Insurance should periodically review their existing programs, existing financing programs, financing and housing programs with stakeholders to ensure that the housing needs are being met.
I mean, they're the stewards of the money, so I think
Right.
part of good stewardship is finding out what the community needs. So
Yeah, and I mean, their developer forum for the QAP is really interesting. You can hear from the developers, like, this is what's working for me or not, and this is before they release the draft, but.
And they'll maybe change one or two things. But I'll be like, yeah, you can't please everybody, you know, you can't, you know, I mean, there's that side of it too, that's one program, they don't do that for other programs.
But
Yeah,
really,
well,
I
that's-
mean, part of enacting the policy is doing that evaluation to make sure that the program is optimal and effective.
So
I mean, that's a
saying
part
that
of
in
the
there
policy
too.
analysis.
I guess my concern is like, I mean, we do this, so do we need a whole new recommendation for something that's already?
You do that, what do you mean?
Well, just generally speaking, like reviewing programs, like, but I guess
that's
you're.
an internal review. I think we're talking about.
You're
like,
okay,
Just like, yeah,
External,
stakeholders.
from the administrator.
Yeah.
External.
All right, give me the words.
She kind of get it up here.
Stakeholders to ensure.
Yeah, there she is, she said she got most of it. DSHA should periodically review the financing and housing programs with stakeholders to ensure that the housing needs are being met.
I'm not sure that the housing needs are being met, to ensure that products and programs
Yeah.
are
Yes,
Optimized.
optimized, yeah.
I think
Okay.
having
Yeah.
great impact.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Okay, so the way it reads, DSHA should periodically review their financing and housing programs with stakeholders to ensure that products and programs are optimized and effective. Period.
So I think my big concern about all of these, and it's something that was mentioned, is again, having left DSHA and worked here, the capacity of DSHA to get staff onboarded and timeframes and that thing. I mean, usually, I mean, that's the capacity issues for all the agencies.
That is one of our recommendations.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's next, but
Yeah, but again, like there's a time period, I mean, it's, sometimes you have the capacity to hire people, but you don't have the people, you know, you can't find the people with full budget. So periodically, I think it gives them that, it gives a little bit big of a window, you know, we don't have to saying like every 2 years or, you know, so, but maybe that could be enforced more, but I hear you. And I also think the DSHA should probably utilize third parties or contractors when they can to, that have like more knowledge of what's happening globally instead of just within Delaware. You know, so we're not stagnant with what happens in Delaware, kind of looking at some of the other states that are, you know, top of mind for some of the issues that we're having and are doing things. And I think sometimes within the state, we get so focused on what happens here and the way we've always done it.
Are we at the point where we need a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Kevin, motion, second.
Second,
All right, going around the room. Eva?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Matt? Fred?
Yes.
Deanna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Marva?
Yes.
Wes?
Yes.
Preston?
Yep.
Great. All right, we have 9 yeses, and we've been through, we've done 5 already. All right, the next one up is M, develop a tax abatement program for affordable rental housing development. As was mentioned earlier, this was an idea that was kicked around in regulatory and permitting, and they wanted to shift it over to this subcommittee. And my understanding is we're talking about, you know, local level taxes, so property taxes, school district taxes.
High. Is it a pilot recommendation?
I don't think so. No, I mean, but it could be.
Okay, I'm just ignorant.
You're no problem.
I'm just so many.
Yeah. Yeah, are we talking about property tax abatements?
Yeah, that was what was brought up in regulatory and permitting, specifically property taxes, like school taxes. Obviously, it would be the municipality that would have to try to make up for that.
They're not gonna do it in perpetuity, they're gonna do it at all for a period of time. But units to be developed, right? 5 years or.
Right.
And so how are we defining rental housing? I think, I'm with this. I think just thinking about property taxes.
So it's already asking for voluntaries.
Yeah, I just worry about that.
Yeah, I don't. The age-old problem is kind of, you know, with rental, can your operations cover those taxes? And so could there be a pilot, you know, payment in lieu of taxes instead? Being.
Look, it's either coming, it's either coming out of the state's thing or everybody else that's non-affordable pays the tip. Bills is still the same, and they're just gonna raise everybody else's property taxes.
Right.
So of course, raise everybody else's property taxes. It's the whole thing of make everybody pay their fair share. But if you're low income, you don't have to pay for the school.
I just worry that it disincentivizes some local governments to be more open
Yeah,
to the development of.
I tend to agree with you.
But even on.
and also, to be honest, when you look at our operating expenses, property taxes are surprisingly low relative to other states. So my point is like, that's not the right thing to attack and abate in order to make affordable housing more affordable in Delaware, like property taxes are low. So I'm not in favor of this one. And I agree that if we were in the city of Lewis and I said, hey, do you want to approve an affordable housing program in your city? Oh, and by the way, I'm going to pay you a lot less in property taxes if you do. It creates a problem.
Yeah, I agree.
We skip it?
Yeah.
All right.
I really like the next one though.
And do we have to vote so that they know we dealt with it?
I don't know that we have
It's just not a
to.
recommendation.
Guess
I
what?
mean, I think we send them what we want them to prove.
Right, and let the regulatory committee know.
But we could always put it in our minutes that we decided, we elected not to proceed.
Discussed it.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one is L.
Caitlin, if you don't mind, Caitlin, if you don't mind, Preston, I guess I have a question with what you just said, though. Are you looking at all property taxes as a whole or splitting them, school versus property?
Well, most of the property taxes down here is school. Like
Okay.
85% of it is.
Yeah, I
And
want
I'm
to make
saying, when I say property taxes, it's the same, it's the whole bill that shows up in September. Some of that, if you're in municipalities, for your municipality, some's for the county, and a big chunk is for the school. The other thing is right now where school funding is such a big issue down here, I'm worried that if you try to pass something that says, but for low income people or affordable housing, they're not gonna pay that portion of the school property tax, you'll get a lot of pushback. And it's not that big of a deal. Like when
Yeah.
I'm sitting there trying to figure out how to finance a project, the property tax line item in my annual operating expenses is not the thing that's killing or making the deal happen. So I think it's too loaded of an issue right now. But because it's such a low component of the operating expenses relative to other areas, the next one is a huge opportunity. Allowing developers to do special tax districts, sometimes referred to as TIFs, tax incremental financing, and financing a big portion of their infrastructure by floating a bond that's paid over 30 years through a property tax hike just on those units in that project is a huge opportunity because you're adding an additional, that financing is less expensive than the typical developer's kind of market rate financing. And B, you're taking an already low property tax number and making it just a little bit higher to allow for that type of financing. So that next number, L or whatever, is a really low hanging fruit, if you ask me, in Delaware for opportunities to reduce the cost of housing.
Okay, thank you.
This is just a logistical question. Does current state law prohibit local bond financing?
I thought that only the state could issue bonds.
Okay. So so it's probably.
No, I think the county can, I mean, I know Bridgeville has, municipalities have, they just need enabling legislation at their level in order to do that. I think the county can do it, or at least in the case of Sussex County, they generally don't, but they can. I'm not positive, but I know that towns have done it. The town of Bridgeville did a TIF for that really big master plan community that's in their town. The town of Milton just did one for a big master plan community coming to its town. And usually it's the developer that takes the lead on it, but the bond is floated by the jurisdiction in which the project is located.
Are you asking the state or municipality to guarantee it?
No. It's guaranteed generally by the property taxes. It's not guaranteed. I mean, there's nuance to that. There's some people that will claim, well, but if this, and this happens, it kind of is guaranteed. But generally that's not the case.
So,
I'm gonna say that's an area I frankly would need more research on bonds and, you know, if there could be more bonding authority or if this, you know, do you think Jay do a bond per project? You know, can we do a, you know, more of a market, a bigger pool of a bond issuance. I am not up on that, I'll be frank, so. I think that we could have some expert come in and tell us a little bit about that. So that we could recommend something with bond issuances, and then TIF is different, right, than a bond, or Preston?
I think it still ends up being a bond that's floated that helps to pay for, you basically increase the property taxes on the homes subject to that project or that area. And you use it to pay down a low interest rate bond that's floated at and essentially is bearing interest at the rate of the municipality or county or state in which the bond is being issued by. So instead of a developer having a weighted average cost of capital of say 9 to 12%, you're floating bonds at 3.5% or 4% or whatever the town of Milton would otherwise pay on a bond it floated on its own.
If you're asking for tax exemptions, I think the state is capped on the amount of tax exempt bonds they can issue. Federally tax exempt bonds they can issue on an annual basis. There's a bond, and I think, Preston, the advantage there is that it's because it's not guaranteed. You're not necessarily getting the rates of the municipality. You're getting the fact that whatever the risk of the bond is, you're getting the federal tax exemption against that rate, which is providing that reduced interest rate because of the tax exemption of the coupon.
Real quick, it's 2:34 p.m. You do have to allow time for public comment. So Amy, I don't know if we are. Just want to be mindful of time. So is the feeling of the subcommittee that we don't have enough information on L and we should move on to another item?
I think so, because I don't know, like, I was thinking this was just a low hanging fruit, like we just need to legislatively allow it, but it sounds like it's already allowed as written. So the question might be, how do you maximize it or optimize it? But we don't really know how to do that.
I mean, I think the way it would work is an ordinance would be passed in the permitting jurisdiction, so in the county, that said, if you meet these following criteria for affordable housing, you automatically qualify for a special taxation district for your project so you're pre-approved, if you will, by the county to float, a bond with the following provisions. And just as we haven't detailed exactly how any of these recommendations are going to work in real life, we don't need to detail exactly how this one is going to work. But we're missing a big opportunity. If we bypass this one, we're missing what I consider one of the best opportunities in all of these recommendations for increasing the amount of affordable housing in Delaware, not at the taxpayer's expense, but at the expense of possibly the market rate and the affordable units, and a hike in our property taxes, which are like our transfer tax are the highest in the country. So the last thing we should be looking at doing is increasing transfer tax and making it even higher than it is today. But our property taxes are some of the lowest in the country. So it's the best opportunity for taking something that's $850 a unit right now, making it $1,500 a unit for 30 years and allowing the developer to have low interest financing on a big chunk of their infrastructure improvements. We don't need to spell out the details. If we like the concept in general, I think we can support that concept and we can look into the details and have those looked at. But that note has nothing to do with this. So I don't know why that note.
That's because when I'm cutting and pasting notes earlier got wonky, so I apologize for that.
So
We just talked about products and services DSHA can do. This is a product, theoretically, DSHA issues tax exempt bonds to provide mortgage finance. They can issue tax exempt bonds to do exactly what Preston's asking to do back in the product.
Yeah,
But
I think we can live with if we change the word allow to encourage.
But this would be a product and service though that DSHA do. You can put it as the example in that products and services DSHA piece that we just had. It's a product or service. It's a product or service that DSHA could administer, or that of other, because you could do it statewide, I'm assuming. issue that bond statewide as a tax stamp bond. And the underwriting of the bond would be that the tax revenue, I guess, I don't know, maybe you can go to the municipalities and say tax revenue, the increased tax revenue is going to pay this bond. Are they willing to do it? Does it have to be a municipality? It can be done in the state.
Well, I think it could be either, so I almost would rather keep it separate so that it's both local and state. If you just do encourage its use, then it could.
I think it's broad enough right now that it could be either, and it should be either.
I think President should make a motion.
Well, my only question is, again, who's encouraging, just, when I'm given this, typing up the final report, we're just saying that the state should encourage local governments, like,
No, I mean, our committee, would be recommending to the state that that I guess the state, planning office work to encourage the permitting authorities, so that if you're in the town, it's the town, if you're in the county, it's in the county, to support the cost of project infrastructure by utilizing special taxation districts for bond financing for exactly what you just said right there.
Somebody from the League of Cities or something.
yeah, Dr. Spence is one of our full task force members. So
So the
he'll be,
League of, I don't think that. Did you hear that? The League of Local Governments, so I don't know that.
so all right, I'm putting league here,
So,
or,
Preston, just a quick question for you. So TIF financing already exists, but not all local municipalities use it. Is it because they don't all know how to use it? Is it to create awareness of something that they could already do and encourage more of it? Or
Yeah,
is it there?
they don't know how to use it, and just like everything down here, they generally won't do something that they haven't seen another municipality do. It's just not used because a lot of people see it as a way of letting the developer off the hook. Well, who would pay for that otherwise? Well, the developer would. Well, then why are we doing this? But if your point is, well, we're trying to reduce the overall cost of the developer because in this particular project, there's an affordable housing component to it that wouldn't otherwise be possible if the developer wasn't utilizing this type of low interest rate financing.
Right, and I get to an actionable item here. So I'm thinking, then would the state's role be to provide training to local municipalities to start getting them to use more? Because I like the idea and I agree with you.
But just encouraging them is a broad enough term that part of their way that I think they would encourage them is by providing them with training. I like the broad nature of that term.
yeah, I think we can capture what you just said, Fred, in the rationale that accompanies the recommendation.
Okay.
And are we talking more than TIF, though? We're also talking about overall bond authorities and bond issuances, aren't we not?
Right. I mean, to be honest, I've never used it but I've never had a project that I thought was appropriate to use it. But I do know when we've looked at what it would do to our cost structure, and it really does help, particularly if you happen to be in a state that has oddly low property taxes. It really does help in the financing of initial improvements, infrastructure improvements to a project.
Okay, so there's infrastructure improvement, but then there's overall bond financing that can finance the whole complete development, right? So that's more.
It's usually relative to public components, so streets, parks, utility extensions. It's not like specific houses or specific buildings. It's usually for site infrastructure.
The TIF.
But
TIF.
once again, we don't need to get into these details for purposes of this recommendation.
We have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we support that clause as written, that recommendation as written.
I'll second. Okay, Matt, second. I'm gonna go around the room. Amy?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Fred? Deanna,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Marva,
Yes.
Wes,
Yes.
Preston.
Yep.
Great, 9 yeses.
Can I recommend, I know the next one is our state transfer tax system, which I think is going to be quite a lengthy conversation. If the group is agreed, I think we had talked earlier about the budget salary scales at DSHA to attract or retain the talent necessary to include the types of financial transactions and underwriting that the state finance agency delivers. So we know all of that's just going to increase, you know, the more money that comes in, the more people you need to process that money.
So what letter is that?
And
Here's adjusting that we
that we just skip 1 and go down to G, skip line 10 and go down to line 11.
I'm on 12, but that's because I added that
Okay.
one. Our blank row.
Okay, so G currently reads, increase the budget / salary scales at DSHA to attract and retain the talent necessary to engage in the types of financial transactions and underwriting that the state finance agency delivers. And then the demand will only increase with additional funding to the HDF. That's more of a note.
So and another,
would also be open to working with contractors. Or so, because sometimes it's more cost effective to work with a contractor. You don't have all the fringe attached with it. It's a short-term project.
Could we make it more broad and say,
We asked for $100 million on one of those, the state agency to help identify that and facilitate.
oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just wondering if we should just, instead of telling them to do budget salary scales, we just ask them to do an assessment, like a workforce assessment, both from salary, talent, quantity of employees, types of employees, that sort of thing.
oh, here's another statement that we did in another group. Support the Delaware State Housing Authority in its effort to talent, improve efficiency, and enhance stakeholder engagement. It's a little bit more broader than what we're talking about with maybe simply in its efforts to attract talent.
You also could have something about capacity.
About capacity or so increased capacities or something.
Is DSHA still like potentially going to merge with the state? I mean, is there still talk about that?
I haven't heard anything other than from advocates who have been talking about a desire for a state housing agency. Yeah, I like your idea, Amy, about like, you know, reviewing, because from a practical standpoint, and apologies if everybody on this call already knows this, but DSHA's salaries are not paid from the state, right? Like our operating budget is mostly private revenue and only a small sliver is federal dollars and a small sliver is state dollars. And those are for specific programs. And then we get a percentage for our administrative costs. But otherwise, you know, the money that the state gives us doesn't pay for me or our lights or our printer ink, for
Right.
example.
But I think I think part of the rationale behind this is that if the revenue that you're earning isn't enough to ensure that you have the talent and expertise necessary, that should come from the state.
Yeah.
The state's portion should be increased to ensure that the SHA is able to operate effectively.
Depending upon how $100 million is deployed, you're gonna have a heck of a lot more revenue. Because you're limited by the HDF, one of your revenue source issues, mortgage revenue bonds, things like that. You know, if you get $100 million increase, it's gonna significantly increase your, not only requirements to do certain projects, but also increase your revenues dramatically, theoretically. So again, I'm all for it.
So maybe
Make sure you get the best talent, you get the best outcome. You do with $100 million, you get the best talent. I'm all for it, but I don't think it's a function of HDF at all.
no, I think I would take
Yeah,
out that last,
that's
take totally out that last sentence, right?
Yeah.
And if it's just increase the budget, salary scales at DSHA to attract and retain the talent necessary, or encourage the increase,
To,
something along those lines.
yeah, do we want to put in?
I think you do. I think you need some words at the start, though. Do we want the state to increase the budget allowance, I guess you could say, for DSHA, or DSHA to increase their budget slash salary scales?
Yeah, that's sort of what my comment was getting at, is like, practically speaking, if we want to raise salaries at DSHA, it's not gonna come necessarily from
Yeah.
state dollars. It would be a decision that our director makes,
Right.
I think it automatically comes with $100 million.
Yes. I think the state's going to have to, I mean, you can't give a huge amount of money and say, we'll figure it out. Because we know how that has worked out here historically.
Anna, you were gonna make a recommendation.
Yes, so typing out the second part of the sentence, but I was thinking of saying something like perform a competitive wage assessment to attract and retain the talent necessary to blah, blah, blah. And then also assess the capacity needs of the Delaware State Housing Authority to, we can't use it effectively apply, but to effectively execute on current and future programs. So the capacity could be either in-house or contracted.
I like that again, because it gets away from us having to speak to the mechanics of how it
Right.
happens.
Right.
But I wholeheartedly agree, I would love a
But
salary bump.
But realistically, won't you need more state money for the DSHA to do that? To increase salaries?
Depends on the 100
Well, right,
million
right,
is
right.
deployed.
That's going to drive that $100 million home.
Well, I think historically it's always been like when you get funding, there's only a sort of,
There's a
Portion of it
percentage
for
that goes to
administrative.
administrative
and
costs.
so when you
Yes.
have those,
It's the
yeah,
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
you get X amount of administrative dollars and that's not gonna cover what you need to, provide a program for.
Right.
What you said sounded beautiful. Could you reread it to me? And I will just, okay.
So the first part was perform a competitive wage assessment to attract and retain the talent necessary to, and then you can add the rest of it. The sentence from, I think, the initial recommendation.
Okay, so DSHA should perform a competitive wage analysis.
Analysis assessment
Well, okay, analysis
to attract and retain
to attract and retain
the talent necessary
the talent necessary to engage in
financial transactions and underwriting that the state finance agency delivers just.
actions and underwriting that the state finance agency delivers.
And then the second sentence would be also assess capacity needs to
Assess
capacity needs to, did I say deliver, effectively execute.
So DSHA should effectively execute its program.
Yeah,
Effectively execute
the Delaware State Housing.
its program.
Do you think DSHA should do that, or do you think somebody else should? Like, does DSHA have the capacity to even,
No, I don't think DSHA should do.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay,
don't
so,
think so either.
all right, so
and I think it needs to be done
Believe
by,
out, on the or outside agency.
a third party,
yeah,
say third party?
Yeah.
yeah.
Costs about $30,000.
Party should perform a competitive wage analysis of DSHA employees.
Use it outside.
Okay, so if we're throwing in this third entity, we need to change the sentence a little bit. A third party should perform a competitive wage analysis of DSHA employees,
Of staffing.
DSHA staffing, to determine how to better attract and retain, or how best to.
Best to, I think.
All right,
Or in its efforts to attract.
all right, I'm gonna
I don't
read this out.
Yeah. attract.
Caitlin, I would say, I think you need to add something there yet at the end that says something about, let's say if the third party, well, let's say the analysis is done and there's not enough funding to appropriately staff, that the state will come in and fill in the gap or something. Like, there's a missing piece, I think, that's missing here, with the state providing additional support out of the state budget.
That third party should make recommendations to the state to effectively,
Did you hear that, Wes?
So
Repeat that
the
more.
third party should identify any funding gaps to present to the state to fill.
That's,
Well, let me back up. We still want them to do the competitive wage analysis. The
Yeah.
point of doing that
Very
is
good.
to be able to make the recommendation to the
Yes.
state. Okay, so.
Yep.
All right,
But I don't think the SHA should be making their own recommendations. I think the third party should be making the recommendations.
right, okay, so the third party should perform a competitive wage analysis of DSHA staffing to make recommendations to the state.
Well, I think they need to,
I think what you had before, if you could reverse it real quick and just add a couple words at the end. Additionally, DSHA should assess capacity needs to effectively execute its programs. And then if necessary, the state should consider additional funding support or something.
should provide.
So, quick question though, of the $100 million, how much of that $100 million is gonna be allocated towards the administration?
Are we linking the two though? That's the problem. Are we linking it on purpose?
I don't think we're gonna think.
I think we put the 100 million straight to production.
Straight to it, but then it's gotta be understood that there's an administrative cost to administering $100 million, that's
Yeah,
usually times.
and we put that in the
7%.
rationale, yeah.
And so what percentage are you anticipating that be? 12%, 15%, 18%? Well, that, because then the dollar goes in and then we say, okay, these are additional dollars. Now, whether DSHA, it gets allocated to DSHA to do the additional hiring, or the state does the hiring, we realize that there's X amount of dollars there.
Yeah. But it'll also start throwing off income, that 100 million annually, start throwing off income that will then go back to DSHA to help support the staff over time. So I think there's only a delta at the very beginning. So,
So the initial investment.
yeah, that's more of an additional investment, which we can put in the.
Okay, so our sentences right now, a third party should perform a competitive wage analysis of DSHA staffing to determine how to best attract and retain the talent necessary to engage in the financial transactions and underwriting that the state finance agency delivers. Additionally, DSHA should assess capacity needs to effectively execute its programs. If necessary, the state should provide funding to address any gaps identified by the third-party analysis. I am welcoming edits.
So why are we saying analysis of DSHA staffing to determine how to best attract? They're not determining how to best attract, are they?
Well, I was gonna take that out, but then
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
the words,
yeah, I think it should be to best attract and just like DSHA to best attract. I mean, that's what we're trying to get at, right? We're not trying to determine, because that's an interim step.
okay,
I think we're adding an interim step that we need to just get to how can we, increase salaries if necessary at DSHA so that we can attract and retain the best talent, right? Period, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, we ready?
Make a motion.
Need a motion?
Motion to approve.
oh, okay, I got Deanna on the motion. Would you like to second, Wes?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, Amy,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Fred,
Yes.
Deanna,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Marva,
Yes.
Wes,
Yes.
Preston. Oh, okay, absolutely. All right, so we have 8 yes. All right, it's 2:56.
Public comment.
So I'm gonna stop share. All right, we do have a couple members of the public. If you would like to give public comment, please raise your hand now. Okay, and let me get up my timer. So bear with me, everybody. navigate multiple screens. This computer. Okay, Lisa, you should be able to speak now. You have 3 minutes.
I don't know if I'm gonna be capable of this, but I wanted to, I think I said most of it in writing. From town hall meetings and speaking with my community members, the idea of attracting new talent to Delaware and affordable housing to that for them. I don't care. Is will affect us great economically. I understand that we want a certain salary range and what population we need to take care of and the infrastructure, etc. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I have given Dr. Matthew Godhold at Delaware Pediatric 800 to 1,000 studies. Excuse me. On you know, for mental health. And what this will, by adding these services for mental health in even in schools and mental health centers for particular populations, adding it, I said that to school. It'll attract the population you want, making the salaries you want to take care of the people you want. At the same exact time, it will completely catapult Delaware and make us a best practice state. Economically, in housing, mental health, and physical health. There are providers in Delaware that are willing to take students under their wing. So regarding cost, it have to look as ugly as one might think, who knows? There's ways that we can work together with universities and programs and even younger high school students that know they're going to pursue this. And there's tons of mental health funding that can be shared to achieve this. I'm sad. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, would anybody else like to share public comment at this time? If so, please raise your hand. We will also accept written public comments over the next 48 hours. Those comments can be sent to housing.taskforce@delaware.gov. Any comments received in the next 48 hours will be appended to the draft meeting minutes for this meeting. I see no other public comment. Turn it back over to our chair.
So would it be helpful for the group if we could take our recommendations and make sure, you know, obviously they'll be in the minutes, but for our document that we have here and the additional items that were added to it, if we kind of resend that out and then we can do another vote on those, include the new items as well. That'd be effective. Okay, great. All right, well, thank you everyone for your time today. It's a very productive meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the meeting for everyone is on February 3rd.
February 6th.
6th.
And those will be posted online soon. All right, thank you everyone online.
Call another meeting?